Hey, good morning, everybody. I think that I have just about hugged everybody's neck in the room already this morning. But it is so good to see all of you here. For those of you joining us here in Lake Charles and online, the Louisiana Travel Association is just so excited to welcome you to our first ever CEO Forum. And Laura has got some great notes from this morning, so I'm going to try to follow them and behave myself. But for those of you who may not know, I think I know everybody in the room. I'm Jill Kidder. And in the back of the room here, and certainly the most important people in the room for us today, because they took care of all the details of everything. Laura Kading, our VP of Communications, Madeline Sanchez Brown. I did remember the Brown this time, Madeline. And from Lake Charles as well. And so just want to thank them, and also Josie, and where's Lane? Oh, there she is in the back of the room. And just want to thank all of you for all the hard work of getting us here today, because this is, as I said, a brand new program and a lot of work to put something like this together. A few years ago, our members of our board began discussing the need for executive training and networking for Louisiana's travel community. And at the same time, LTA saw a need to diversify our educational offerings. We wanted to offer niche segments of our industry the chance to gather in small groups. And that's really what we want for you today, is to really network, get to talk to each other, because that's where you're going to learn the most. Now, we're going to stand up and have some great speakers for you today, but you're really going to learn from each other. And so we understand that, and we want you to take that time to do that. The idea for today's CEO Forum was born, and we have an incredible day ahead, as I said. Today, we're talking about crisis management, board management, team leadership, diversity, and personal growth. There's a lot of info, but also a lot of fun. We want today to be informative, but relaxed and enjoyable at the same time. We need you not to just listen, but to also participate, to chime in with questions and sit next to someone new. You know, as we change up and go into our different breakout sessions and things, you know, the reserve stuff is just a suggestion, okay? But please sit next to somebody you don't know as well as the person you're sitting next to right now, I guess I should say. Well, not only is it good to be together, but it's really great to be in Lake Charles, Kyle. I just can't tell you how excited we are. As you all know, we tried to bring Summit here a couple of times last year, and it just didn't quite work out. Pandemic, Hurricane Laura, Hurricane Delta. I'm not going to read them all, Laura. I'm sorry, I just can't. But 2020 was quite the year for Southwest Louisiana. We are so encouraged to be here supporting the local community and enjoying the beautiful scenery, blue tarps and all, Kyle. But before I bring him up, because I want him to welcome us for sure, but I wanted to share with you this recent magazine. This is Thrive magazine, and I don't know if, look, Kyle's putting his head down, but he didn't know I was going to do this. But this says the 2021 Economic Update, Resilience, Rebuilding, and Recovery. And guess whose picture is on the bottom of this magazine cover? It's our Kyle. How about that? You know, when the CVB, the word CVB, and the word Economic Update are all on the cover of a magazine, that's big time. And so we are really excited that we are here. And Kyle, would you come up, my friend, and welcome us?
Thank you, Jill. I appreciate getting embarrassed first thing in the morning. So I don't have any slides, so I don't need that. It is truly my pleasure to welcome all of you back. It has been a long year since we've been face to face, and since we had planned Summit. And so thank you all for taking the time to, out of your busy schedules, to come and join us and be a part of this first time event. I have one of my board members is here. He also serves on the LTA board, and he's also one of the people who makes things happen at the Golden Nugget. And so I want to thank Mike Buckley. Mike is here with us today, and the entire team at Golden Nugget for what they've done to roll out the red carpet. It's certainly very exciting here. Chart House is opening on Thursday. The golf course just reopened in mid-March, and so things are moving in the right direction. And Mike, we appreciate you and the entire team at the Golden Nugget. Also, I'd be remiss without thanking our Lieutenant Governor for being here with us. He's here every time that the tourism industry is here, but I'd also like to tell you that he was here when the tourism industry wasn't necessarily here. Just days after the storm, the Lieutenant Governor came over in his blue jeans and his work shirt and rolled up his sleeves and served meals out of a parking lot to people who were hungry and needed a hot meal because we still didn't have electricity at that time. He's been back several times since. He's visited with our mayor, our police jurors, and has been one strong advocate for Southwest Louisiana in our rebuilding process. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. We appreciate that. And also our Assistant Secretary, Doug Bourgeois, we appreciate you coming over. And again, all that you're doing to lead our industry back during this very difficult time around the world, not just in Louisiana, not just in Southwest Louisiana. Jill asked that I give you a really brief update, and so I will, about Southwest Louisiana. She mentioned a couple of things: Hurricane Laura, Hurricane Delta. Of course, we do have a worldwide pandemic. And then, of course, during February, we had an ice storm that knocked out our water for 5 days. So just so you know, that's 4 federally declared disasters within a 12-month time period. And it's the first time in history that any community in the United States has had 4 federal disasters in any rolling 12-month time period. Welcome to Southwest Louisiana, folks. And so as you drove through, you saw blue tarps, you saw buildings in disrepair, you saw things kind of halfway done. We have done a lot of cleanup, but we still have a long way to go. Those of you who have experienced Rita, Katrina, Ike, Gustav, again, the list is long. Everyone in this room has seen remnants of hurricanes, tornadoes, disasters, so you know what it's like. It just doesn't reappear. I would tell you that we're making growth. We lost about 60% of our hotel capacity right off of the bat. We're back now to having 60% of our rooms available, and slowly getting back. By the summer, we feel like we'll be at about 85%. The other 15% are going to have to be completely torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. Many of our restaurants, again, have been reopening on a regular basis. In fact, today, a downtown restaurant, Buffy's Po' Boys, is their first day open. Many of you know Steamboat Bill's that opened last week. So every day brings a new excitement and a new something that's moving in the right direction. But as I said, we're very thankful to have meetings here. We had the Louisiana Assessors Association here a week and a half ago. We've got this here. Later in May, we're actually hosting Rendezvous South, which many of you participate in with the meeting planners from around the South. So things are moving back in the right direction, both in Lake Charles and I think in the travel and tourism industry. I think all of us can be excited about where we are today, where the vaccinations are today, and where we hope to be in the next month to 6 weeks as we get ready for our spring and summer travel, which for many of us is the key part of the travel season. So welcome to Lake Charles. Please take notes, learn a lot, and again, thank you for coming and visiting.
Boy, we sure miss our voice of God when he's not here, don't you? Our Vogue in the back. But I do appreciate it, Kyle. Thank you so much. And also, Mike, I guess Mike had to step out, but wanted to say again, thanks to the Golden Nugget for their hospitality. Next, I want to bring up today's CEO Forum sponsor, and we are so grateful for our media partners who have stuck with us through canceled events and continued to not only support LTA, but also provide members with exceptional advertising opportunities. Y'all give a big round of applause to my good friend, Nelson Gum.
Okay, you really don't want to hear an infomercial that's very long. I know I have 10 minutes, but I'm not going to do 10 minutes. It's interesting. I was looking at the slides, and I realized that sometimes we don't pay attention to our own brand. We pay more attention to y'all's brand. So we have a slide up there. Somewhere it says, no, not yet. It says 28 years. Really, it's 29 years. We're moving into our 30th year in October, and I'll never forget the first time I came over here, which was 28 years ago, and I got roped in by Danny Young to be part of the Summit Steering Committee. And I'll tell this story until probably I'm not in Louisiana anymore, but it really forced me, because he had so many meetings, to learn so much about this great state. And so we're thrilled to be back. Kyle, based upon the number of Texas cars that are in the parking lot here, it looks like about 80% of the license plates out there were Texas, and I guarantee you most of that's from Houston. What's new with us in the coming year is we have a new account director named Nicole Jewell. She knows a lot more than me. She's been with us a little over 8 years, and we decided that this one is going to stick. Stu was around for a long time. If you get to New Orleans, call him up. He'll Uber you around. But Nicole has been with us a long time, understands all of our programs, and I'm just happy to have her over here. We're both vaccinated, so that's even better. But she grew up in the tourism business in San Antonio, so she understands this business very well. Her dad was an icon over there. The next thing that is changing, well, it has already changed, is there we go. So we've represented AAA since '96, and this year they went ahead and changed their brand to AAA Explorer Texas and Southern. Two separate audiences. Their audience continues to grow. They've moved from a 6-time publication to 4 times, so we have that change within the LTA print programs. And then they expanded their first-party data newsletter, and it's the largest travel newsletter in both Texas, and I would almost venture to say, maybe except the Lieutenant Governor and Doug's newsletter, the largest in the state of Louisiana, with a little over 278,000 opt-in subscribers between Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas. Moving through that, those are some of the programs that we have with LTA on the marketing programs. So you can see they're in the book. If you want to know what they're all about, talk to Nicole. She knows more than me. I'll be saying that a lot. Our digital media solutions team has continued to expand. And as we've continued to expand and evolve, we have really grown not only our team, but our partnerships, and are very in tune with all the changes really that are going to take place and continue to take place in the digital market. We work with, I'm having a hard time here with technology. We work with a number of brands in the travel industry, some of which are here today. Ben happens to be one of them. So does Donna's team and Alana's. But what we really focus in on is your brand, what you're trying to accomplish, and everything that we do on our digital solutions side is a custom program. We don't really have off-the-shelf items, and we don't believe in just selling clicks or impressions. Everything we're doing is a data-driven strategy, and it really focuses on a full funnel, omni-channel approach. And if you want to know what that means, see Nicole. As we move into 22, there's going to be a lot of changes that happen. And the main thing is third-party cookies are going away. So with third-party cookies going away, first-party data becomes even more important. And we are focused both in on contextual targeting and a lot of first-party data. So one more time, if you want to know more about that, see Nicole. We also have our own custom dashboard, but unlike our partner Entrada and C-Source, our dashboards. One more. Keep going. Up. I'm ahead on here. I should have clicked myself. Anyway, if you want to see more, see Nicole. But we have dashboards that are live that go with our campaigns and programs. And then last but not least, I believe that the strength in what we do is having good partnerships. And we have very unique programs with every one of these partners as well as our data sources. So with that, I'm done with my infomercial. And by the way, Kyle, even though we're in Texas, I'm in Entergy, and I experienced all your pain because every time you had a hurricane, my lights went out in the Woodlands for days. And, you know, when it snowed, we sent some of that back to you guys. But anyway, thank you very much. Enjoy today. And, oh, by the way, one last thing. If anybody wants more coaching after this program, see Darian.
I think we've all been coached in our lives by Darren at one time or another, huh? Thanks, Nelson. We really do appreciate everything you do and your just partnership always. We can always count on you to just pick up the phone and talk to us whenever we need to. Now, to introduce our speaker, I want to welcome to the podium our board chair, Mr. Dickie Brennan. I don't think he needs an introduction. Do you guys think?
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Jill. And I wish Mike was still here. I can't tell you how many people have told how wonderful this hotel looks, and to see all these people in here. And I can't believe we've actually been able to land and spend some time here in Lake Charles. So that's good and exciting. And so also, Kyle, thank you so much for hosting us. And like I said, we're glad to be here with you. Also, for everybody in this room that's decided to come join us, I think we're going to have a wonderful, lot of good exchanges and sharing. This is an incredibly important year for all of us, and certainly the state of Louisiana. Next, I'd like to thank our Lieutenant Governor for being here with us. Thank you, Bill. And, you know, if someone were to ask me, you know, who's someone you would consider a great leader, certainly Michael Heck would be someone I would throw out there. I can't believe I haven't an opportunity to kind of throw some digs at you, but I'm going to keep it very professional. Well, for any of you who aren't aware of this incredible leader that we have, Michael is president and CEO of the Greater New Orleans, Inc., the Economic Development Agency for Southeast Louisiana. GNO Inc.'s mission is to create a regional with a thriving economy and an excellent quality of life for everyone, which is, you know, personally, I believe in the inclusive, the regionalism, the state of Louisiana, and, you know, Michael has been so supportive of the hospitality industry. Before coming to GNO Inc., Michael led the $250 million Katrina Small Business Recovery Program for the state of Louisiana. Prior to coming home to Louisiana, Michael worked for Mayor Michael Bloomberg in New York City, running the post 9/11 small business program. Sounds to me like this guy has some experience with recovery work. And then, let's see, Michael's entrepreneurial experiences include co-founding a conglomerate of restaurant ventures, including Foreign Cinema, named Restaurant of the Year 2000 in San Francisco. That's kind of why I think we've connected over these years. He's a good restaurant guy. And then Michael holds an MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business and an undergraduate degree from Yale. Recently, Michael has been recognized as one of the 10 people who make a difference in the South, one of the 20 icons of the Tricentennial, and 2018 CEO of the Year, all very well deserving. With family roots in Louisiana going back to the 1830s, Michael now lives in New Orleans with his wife, Marlene, who's currently pursuing a PhD at Tulane, and their two teenage sons. It's my pleasure, honor, to introduce my friend and thank him for coming all the way from New Orleans to spend some time with us.
That was gentle. Great. Dickie, thank you, and Jill, and to our sponsors, appreciate you making this happen, and Governor and Kyle and everybody, thank you. It's great to see everybody here, and man, it's just good to be, back on the breakfast potato circuit again. I mean, I had an event yesterday at the Pontchartrain Center, and I've never been more excited to be at the Pontchartrain Center. Now that's a low bar, but no, usually I was there for, robotics competition or, I don't know, rare coin show or something. So, but it's fantastic to be here. It's, this group and people like you are particularly important to me because I am a recovering restaurateur. As those of you know, in the hospitality business, you can never fully recover. You can just work the program every day. And a few laughs in the room, quiet chuckles. So here's my restaurant origin story, just so you know that I'm not just totally making this up. I'm going to tell you an unbelievable story. So I was in business school out in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. One of my classmates was the 7th employee at Yahoo. He now lives in Jamaica, the island, not in Queens. And I was a contrarian, i.e. an idiot, and so I went into the hospitality industry instead of going and joining Netscape because I thought I knew something different. Actually, I'm glad I did it because the experience has shaped and supported me my whole life. So anyway, our first place was called Foreign Cinema. I don't know if y'all have been there. Maybe it's in San Francisco in the Mission District. It's a restaurant, outdoor movie theater, right? Kind of a thing like Cinema Paradiso, if you know that film. And so because it was the mid-90s and because my partner was wacky, we decided that for the opening event, what we would do is we would screen Fellini's La Dolce Vita. And for you film buffs here, La Dolce Vita is a film that starts with the redemption Christ being lifted off the hillside and flown out of Rio. And it's a very kind of obvious metaphor for their loss of religion and their godlessness. And so we thought we'd do that. So one of our staff members was somebody close to the Burning Man crew because that's what San Francisco was back then. So we said, here's what we want to do. We want you to build for us a 16-foot high replica of Jesus from La Dolce Vita, but we want to customize it. We want you to give Jesus a chest cavity that's operable. And what we want to do is we want to get a helicopter, and we're going to drop Jesus into the courtyard, and then his chest is going to open, and we're going to project La Dolce Vita out of the chest of Jesus Christ. I've got pictures of this. We thought this was a good idea. We thought it would make a real splash. So anyway, the day comes. It's August 1999. I just graduated. We've been building this my second year of business school. And Jesus comes. He looks great. And we have him out in a back alley behind. If you know San Francisco, they're the main streets and then like the back alleys. And we had managed to get a helicopter permit down for the Mission District. And I actually met the cop the other day, or the sister of the cop I talked to who actually got it for us. He's like, I don't know who you bribed. But so helicopter shows up, we're having the event, and because it was San Francisco, we had burlesque dancers and fire breathers and DJs and annoying cocktails. And it's the anointed time for the Savior to come. And so we're waiting, and my partner turns to me and he goes, "Where's Jesus?" And I go, "Wait a minute, first of all, I'm Jewish. Like, you got the wrong book." But I guess, fine, I'll go out. And so I go back out, and I go to the back alley, and there's the statue, and he's there lying on the street, and there's the helicopter. And so I go to the helicopter pilot, and I say, look, it's time. We've got the media in there, we've got investors in there, and we're all waiting for the Son of God to come. And he goes, "Dude, I can't do it." I'm like, "Oh, Jesus. All right, what?" "Oh, excuse me, no pun intended." And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, I can't. He's too heavy." I'm like, look, now is not the time to get into this. It's a play on the film. It's a metaphor. It's not a religious comment at all. It's a prop, right? And he goes, no, you don't get it. It's too heavy. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, I think when we waited for the helicopter, we didn't include the base. Jesus, I can't lift him. I don't have enough lift to actually lift the statue of Jesus Christ over the buildings, clear it, and drop it in the courtyard, so I can't do it. I was like, oh man, this is a big deal. So anyway, went back, had to explain to everybody that the Savior was not coming. We had to wait a little bit longer. And the next day in the newspaper, in the Chronicle or the Examiner, or whatever it is, a headline in the living section was "Foreign Cinema Opens, Jesus Doesn't Show." And then we got a lot of media out of it. Most expensive $40,000 stunt I'd done in my life to then. And then you might ask why at G&O Inc. we're so big on tort reform, right? And you might say it's because of auto insurance rates or it's because of reform. It's because then the artist who built the statue, or who designed it rather, it was built by the Burning Man people, the one who sketched it out, her boyfriend was an attorney, and so they then sued us for copyright infringement because she said that she owned the image to Jesus Christ. And we had used it without her permission. I am not making this shit up, right? So now we fly off. I thought we're like eminent domain or whatever it's called, like the reason why you can use Mickey Mouse now, right? And so we ended up, fighting and mediated. Ended up settling. We paid her $2,500 for the rights to the image of the Son of God, and then we got our legal bill, and it was $22,500. And that's when I learned a lot as a young 27-year-old, and why I committed myself to defeating Morris Bart. So that was much more than I was supposed to reveal this morning. All right. We're supposed to talk about coming back, and as Dickie, as you said, this is now, if you consider COVID a major disaster, which obviously it is, and the biggest, but it's not the first one I've been through. And so the way that I think about it is that it's the same rodeo. It's just a different bull. We've been here before. 9/11, Katrina, and all the kind of mini Macondos. In between then. There's a certain rhythm to these events, I guess is the right way to say it. And you kind of learn that there's some things that are consistent throughout all of them. And I think that the biggest lesson that I've learned is that when these events happen, there's no way to bring back the people who have perished because of it. And with COVID, the number is still kind of incomprehensible. I mean, World War I, II, and Vietnam all combined were fewer people, right? It's just, and all of us in this room know people who have suffered and passed away because of COVID. But the way that you can do something about it and honor that memory is to build back something better than was there before. And so the concept that we coined during Katrina for this was we didn't just want to be resilient, because resilience implies that you're coming back to the previous trajectory. We said we want to be what we call radical resilient. And radical resilience was this idea that if your previous trajectory was like that, which if we're being honest is what New Orleans was in the couple of decades coming up to Katrina, that we want to hit an inflection point with the event and come back like that, come back better than before. And so this idea of radical resilience is, I think, what compels a lot of what we do today. And if you look back at those events, I'll take 9/11 as the first one, and 9/11, is still something. I was actually meant to fly out of JFK on the morning of 9/11, and it was one of those really surreal things. I was in the shower, I was staying with my folks' place outside of New York City, and I was in the shower, and my mother busted into the bathroom while I was in the shower, which was not atypical growing up, and she said. My mom, bless her heart, she said, "Take your time, they blew up the World Trade Center." And I was like, I just went back to showering because I'm like, and then I went downstairs, and my father, who tends to be a little bit more, he's an accountant, tends to be more fact-based in the relationship. He said, "Michael, this changes everything." And those words still kind of, haunt me because, of course, everything, particularly for the travel industry, did change after that. But then getting involved in 9/11, what I saw is under the guidance, first of Giuliani, then of Bloomberg, was that downtown New York City, a dirty little secret, had actually been previously really destroyed by the World Trade Center. That development took out the street grid, and it kind of killed the neighborhood. And if you spent time down there, after 5 p.m., it was dead. I mean, there was no economy, there was no life. And it was brought back afterwards as a much more dynamic live-work neighborhood that has much more energy and that's providing much more tax revenue to the city. And of course, it does not in any way compensate for the loss of life or how it's changed the world for the worst. But we did build back something that was better than was there before. And Katrina, here there's so many examples of things that have been done better, post-Katrina that we could go through. And so just a few, Billy, flood protection. I mean, the $14 billion Great Wall of the South Shore is a major improvement that we got done. Education. The schools in New Orleans were so bad pre-Katrina that one year the valedictorian of one of the schools had gotten, I think, a 16 on her ACT. All right? I mean, that type of, just criminal negligence. And now the schools are held up as a model of choice, and improvement. You look at good government, cracking down on corruption. And then, of course, you look at the saints. And, it might sound strange. No, really, but we wouldn't be here today talking about how smart we are if Steve Gleason, who's just an extraordinary human being, if his fingers had been 2 inches to the left on September 25th, 2006 against the Dirty Birds, and we hadn't gone on to beat them, and then people were crying. I don't know if any of y'all remember that game or were in the stands. Everybody was crying, not just because we beat Atlanta, which is reason enough to be totally beklempt, but because we knew at that point that we weren't going to lose the Saints, because there was a very real risk of losing the Saints to San Antonio. It's kind of been buried in history, but it really was, right? But that they were going to come back, and they were going to come back better than ever. And by metaphorical extension, New Orleans and Louisiana was going to come back better than ever. And it did. And I think that sense of being a winner and of pride and of teamwork has never lost us. And I think that's the debt that we'll always owe to Drew Brees, frankly, primarily, going forward. So New Orleans came back. And I think that coming out of COVID, we're going to see there are also these opportunities to honor the loss by doing something better. So I thought a nice way to organize this talk and not make it too terrible for you was just to kind of think about what are the top lessons that I've learned now going through these disasters. And I'm sure that most of these y'all already know, and maybe a few will be new ideas for you. So here's my top 10, not in any particular order. But the first one I called 911 to 411. This is the most fundamental thing, and good political leaders get this, is that in a disaster, what people crave more than anything is timely, factual, actionable information. Just regular news they can use. And if as a leader, as an individual, if you provide that, you're already operating at like a B+ level of leadership. It's so critical. And if you don't do that by hiding or by not providing good information or information that's digestible, it goes the other way very, very quickly. And so, one of the things that we've done during COVID that's worked so well is now it's no longer daily because we don't need it, but we put out these daily updates. And the daily updates were just emails that I sent out to our constituents, about 4,000 or 5,000, that were just quick little emails. There were no pictures. There wasn't that annoying thing that said, can't see this email? Click here, which is really stupid. It's like, why am I sending it to you if you can't see it? It just seems like I'm creating, it seems like I'm teasing, right? And what these emails would have was very basic information about regulations, about financial assistance, about webinars. And so it gave people a sense of where the ground was in the fog of war, because that's what disasters are in the early days. And if you look at the leaders, if you look at what the governor has been doing, right? Because the governor gets this, and the governor has a military background. He does these, regular updates, and people love them, and people have to appreciate that they give them information that they can use. It was something that Andrew Cuomo, it worked for him until it didn't anymore. But But let's be clear, like Cuomo understood this so much. Like nobody liked Andrew before this, okay? You know, my mom's from New Orleans, family's from Donaldsonville, but I grew up in New York. I actually went to college with Chris Cuomo, so I know the Cuomos, all right? They are very funny, very smart, and very obnoxious. And I think Andrew is all those things, but not funny, right? And but he knew that if he got out there and he put these numbers up and gave, or if you remember, Governor Jindal was particularly good at this, right? In the Katrina days, it was like his thing, right? And he would do it without notes, and it was the boy wonder, right? I know, Kyle, but it worked until it didn't too. There, right? There's no media here, right? Okay, no media that's reporting. So the first thing is just the regular information. The second one is harder, and we do a worse job of it. But I want to kind of emphasize it, is that the same time that we're dealing with the acute crisis of today, right? And so my metaphor for that is making sure we don't trip on the cracks in the sidewalks. And for anybody that's ever walked around New Orleans, you know how important that it is. I mean, the number one killer in New Orleans is probably the sidewalks. Honestly, like slip falls, broken hips, like the struggle is real, right? So you got to always kind of have that downward peripheral vision, which, by the way, masks have made difficult, right? Right? It's really annoying. But at the same time that you're looking down, you've got to be looking at the horizon. And so it's kind of like rubbing your stomach while you're patting your head, is that great leadership in disasters is simultaneously dealing with the acute crisis today while looking at the opportunity tomorrow and pointing in that direction. And I think that one of the challenges that we have is that, leaders won't tell you this, but crises are actually very politically convenient. Because, as I said, if you get up there and just are available and are competent every day, then you're going to get a B+. Like, you're not screwing up. But are you truly leading? Are you truly taking people to a better place? And I think that one of the things that COVID has allowed us to do as a nation, in a lot of ways, is deal with the crisis every day. These are the numbers. This is the infection rate. This is the hospitalization rate. Here's what's happening with the vaccines. But not talk about how we leverage this for the future. And even today, there are literally trillions with a T of dollars coming down from DC, right? We've got the American Rescue Plan, which is $2 trillion. We've got 12 appropriation bills with earmarks back in them. We've got an infrastructure bill that's going to be, $3 trillion they're talking about? And I talk about this stuff, and people there's no excitement. Nobody leans forward in their chair. It's like people have gone billion blind. Right? You know what olfactory adaptation is? Like if there's a bad smell, like if you're changing diapers all day, you stop smelling it. I think people have stopped smelling the billions. And so there's very little discussion in this country about how we should do a WPA, right, with the money and build the infrastructure that's going to employ people and literally build the future, whether it's roads and bridges or rail or digital infrastructure. I mean, this opportunity is not going to happen again, because I promise you, when the spigots turn off, and the federal spigots will turn off within 2 years, and they're going to turn off hard, right? Because we're printing money, right? Like we're like Zimbabwe after a rager. I mean, it's like, I know this because I had my honeymoon in Zimbabwe. And so for anniversary present, a few years ago for my wife, I got her 180 trillion Zimbabwean dollars, right? I got it on eBay for $16.54. It was 100 trillion, 50 trillion, 20 trillion, and 10 trillion. Beautiful notes done in kind of Metallica font. But that's what happens when you keep printing money. And I know that inflation doesn't matter anymore. And Jerome Powell said, if more people want to eat out, more restaurants will open. Because that's how it works, Dickie, right? Dickie, the king of the pop-up. Dickie Brennan's pop-up steakhouse. So anyway, I think that true leadership in a crisis is saying, how do we manage the suffering today and mitigate it, but also create a better future at the same time? And I think we have to do a better job of that. What GNO Inc. did to try to make that happen is we created a document called GNO Future. And that is our 10-year plan for the region. And what we point out is that coming out of Katrina, there are opportunities in logistics, in technology reshoring, in healthcare, things like telemedicine, in manufacturing, like pharmaceuticals coming back to the U.S., in people fleeing places like New York and San Francisco and coming to second-tier markets like Louisiana. That's an enormous opportunity for us. So we have to focus on that. It's a problem that when people are leaving San Francisco and New York, which I give them immense credit for, that they're saying, oh, I'm going to go to Texas or I'm going to go to Florida because I'm hearing from, Governor Abbott, or I'm hearing from Francis Suarez in Miami, right? Those places are actually looking to the future even as they, mandate issues today, they deal with the issues today. All right, third thing. One of the blessings, and you can't say this out loud as a leader, but of disasters, is that they pressure test an organization. You will see what systems work and what people work. And you will see which systems fail and which people are not up to the task. And so I think it's a fascinating opportunity to see which people on your team should be elevated, which systems are kind of storm-proof, versus those people that need to be moved on to other opportunities, right? And which systems need to be fixed. And every disaster that I've gone through, it's been really remarkable to see those people that step up and step into it and blossom. And a lot of careers have been made by these disasters, right? Versus those people that just aren't up for it, right? I mean, Governor, you run towards the fire. You do. It's your natural instinct to do it, right? Not everybody has that instinct. Some people kind of shrink back and put out surrogates, and it doesn't work, right? So I think that the pressure testing, the separating the wheat from the chaff, is actually one of the real benefits. And, so you're talking to the oil and gas companies, right? And I'm talking to them about the latest permatorium that's coming out of D.C. And I said to them, how concerned, how forceful should we be in D.C., talking to folks at BOEM and the White House and Cedric about this problem. And it's really interesting. They said, well, we're concerned, but we're not panicked. And the reason is that during the oil price crash, which was partially caused by COVID, we've gotten rid of our underperforming employees. We've made our systems more efficient. And by the way, we already have leases that were working. So actually, we're more profitable right now than we were before we came in at $60. So we're watching this because we don't want a Macondo situation. But actually, we've been able to take advantage of this to create more efficient companies. And if you talk to the restaurant world, and I still talk to a lot of folks, including my own place, which just reopened in San Francisco, and restaurants have become a hell of a lot more efficient, right? You start looking at your food cost, you start looking at your labor cost, and you start saying, why are we doing it this way? And a lot of restaurants will never go back because they've seen better ways of doing it. So the fourth thing, become the master of disaster. This is the Louisiana thing. Like, people are always like, how are we going to make people forget Katrina? We're never going to make people forget Katrina. The images of the Superdome are indelible. However, we have been able to, I think to some degree, pivot from being seen as the victims of disaster to being seen as the masters of disaster. And what I mean by this is a couple of things. One, the Dutch drive about 4%, which is significant, of their GDP by selling their water management technology, their engineering, their building, their construction. So like if you've got a problem with a levee or a dike, you're calling somebody with a name you can't pronounce who's very tall, in Holland, right? That's their thing. We're now beginning to do that here in Louisiana with places like the Water Institute, right? Is saying that actually we actually have this brand. The whole world is going to be experiencing these disasters because, as we know from things like flood and what happened in Nashville, for example, last week, there's nowhere in the world that's not experiencing natural disasters right now. That we can actually own this brand, and it's something that we can actually be the best at, and we can export it to the rest of the world. For me, the best example of this was a few years ago. I never know what my day begins. I looked yesterday, it said Golden Nugget. I was like, hey, I guess I'm going to the Golden Nugget. I looked at my phone one morning and it said boardroom 12 noon Iraq, right? And so I was like, okay, sure. So we went to the boardroom and there was actually a team of diplomats from Iraq in the boardroom. And we had no idea why we were here still, which was making it kind of fun. And they gave us their business cards, and the business cards had gold on them, which if you're from the Middle East means you're important, right? And so we're sitting and they start presenting these slides on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And basically what had happened is that Saddam Hussein, to get back, and Saddam Hussein was Shia or Sunni, I'm sorry. Well, whichever he was Shia. Okay. So to get back at the Sunnis, Muslims in the south of the country, he dammed up the Tigris and Euphrates River and turned the area that used to be marshland down there basically to desert. And as they're presenting this, I'm thinking about this, Tigris, Euphrates, Mesopotamia, I'm saying, okay, so they want our help, our advice on how to restore their delta, how to restore the Tigris and Euphrates where they come together. And then I began to think about this, and I went to Sunday school. I said, wait a minute, that's the Garden of Eden. So there's a group here that came to New Orleans to ask for our assistance on restoring the Garden of Eden. I said, wow, our reputation has grown to biblical proportions. And that's where it sunk in that actually we can take what's happening in Louisiana because it's happening around the world. And it's something that people will come to us for our advice and our expertise. And so we can not only save ourselves, but save others. The fifth I kind of touched on, it's about making money. It's not very couth to talk about it, but in these disasters, there are enormous opportunities to make money. I can't say it any other way. Some of that comes from just doing business better, improving margins, and some of that comes from the federal response to these disasters, which has grown geometrically since 9/11. I don't know how much New York got after 9/11. I want to say $80 billion, right? And then remember that Mary Landrieu was laughed out of D.C. when she went there with a $200 billion request post-Katrina. $200 billion is literally rounding error coming out of COVID, where we're talking about trillions. So what I've seen in this is that if you're smart about it, you can actually, again, find opportunities as a business. So what we did at G&O Inc. during COVID is we set up something called G&O Pivot, right? Now, who here knows the story of Higgins Industries and the Higgins boat? And you weren't supposed to. Okay. So Andrew Higgins, before World War II, what was Higgins Industry doing, basically? Not even shipbuilding. I mean, they were little P-rows for going into the marsh and helping with oil and gas exploration, probably some fishing. And then we had World War II, and he converted them to basically landers for the beach for Omaha, front loadings, and General Eisenhower said, Andrew Higgins saved the free world. In the process, what's interesting about that is two things happened. One, Andrew Higgins drank a fifth of whiskey every day, but he was responsible. It's true. He had a driver who would drive him home because he could never drive by the end of the day. He was a hard-living man. But second thing, he took Higgins Industries from being 75 people to being 20,000 people, and the first truly integrated shop floor in New Orleans. So he took a business that was a very small business, and he grew it into a major global one. And by the way, where was Higgins Industries located? Nobody remembers this either. No, Mishu. Mishu. Right where they're building the mission to Mars right now, right? So the point is just that he pivoted. So we use that as inspiration. We set up a website called G&O Pivot, and over 70 companies signed up for it who are pivoting their operations to create new revenue streams and sustain their operations during COVID. So we had distillers who are now making sanitizers. We had Nola Couture now making masks. We had a makerspace now doing 3D printing for auctioner. And we said this is a way people are not only sustaining their business, but they're also actually growing it and creating new revenue streams. And with restaurants, if you look at what's happened there on the top end, I love the fact that restaurants have discovered al fresco dining during COVID. We will never go back because when I'm a restaurateur, I know once you become a restaurateur, the world changes the way you see it. So you begin to see square footage as revenue, right? People are like, why are you looking at the floor? You're like, I'm seeing money. And so, right? And so when I go to a restaurant right now, we're eating on the sidewalk or the driveway, I'm doing the multiplication. That's, 40 more covers that night. That's money in the bank on the top line. And then when I talk to restaurateurs and they say things like, we're never going back to in-person dining. We're just going to do pickup, right? Or, if you talk to T over at Commanders, they're doing 7 figures of business doing delivery of turtle soup around the country, right? New top line with something called a Gold Belly or something, right? So all these new business opportunities present themselves. And if you look at the businesses there's 3 kind of businesses that are making it through COVID. There's the ones who are just caning it because they're lucky. Like you talk to a guy named Michael Adler that sells jewelry. He's never sold more Rolexes. What's the plural of Rolexes? Rolli? Than ever because people aren't traveling and so they've been spending money, right? Or then there's other businesses though that are coming through because they've been smart. and they're never going to go back on those business practices. Then there's a third tranche that have just been in trouble. Sixth thing, making lemonade from oily water is what I wrote down. I'll talk about Lieutenant Governor and Macondo and the BP oil spill, right? I mean, the whole reason that we have a coastal master plan, and Kyle, you know this too, is because we use that disaster and our advocacy coming through it to create a revenue stream for Louisiana. And that was just, again, making lemonade out of oily water. So it's always about trying to look at these disasters and figure out how do we pivot them, again, in a way that's going to help us in the future. That feels redundant, so we're going to keep going on. Okay, seventh one I wrote is the nutria that roared. This is something I've learned being here in New Orleans and being with GNO Inc. Now, GNO Inc. is a fake organization. There is no such thing as the region. It doesn't really exist. We have no statutory power. We have no money. I'm kind of like a fake politician. And so you say, well, how do we have any power at all? What we've discovered is that through coalitions, you can be immensely powerful. And probably our best example of this was a different disaster, was flood insurance. Biggert Waters, now about 8 years ago, came through, and it basically was meant to fix flood insurance. It was going to destroy coastal America. And this was a problem because here in South Louisiana, we had homes that suddenly had their flood insurance bill that was going to get multiple times of their mortgage. People with $10,000 flood insurance bill. So they were just going to have to leave their homes, right? I remember doing a press event with Senator Vitter, and all these homeowners just came up and just dropped their keys out of his shoes. I mean, it was good TV, but it was serious, right? Because how are you going to afford a $10,000 flood insurance bill? And we were kind of panicked because right now the prevailing viewpoint in D.C., particularly following Katrina, was, well, that's what those dumb people get for building down near the water anyway. What were they thinking? And you'd be like, well, that's because where all commerce happens, and that's why we bought a third of the country from Napoleon when he was down on his luck and blah, blah, blah. But there was the coastal arrogance, right? And so two things happened. One was Superstorm Sandy, right? Once Wall Street flooded, New York suddenly paid attention. I'm not going to say that I was happy about that. And so moving on, but also we discovered that we could form a coalition with other people who were living near the water or living near rivers. So we developed a national flood insurance coalition. We created an organization with about 250 different groups from around the country, 35 states, and we were eventually able to get President Obama to sign reform legislation that he was against because they thought that flood insurance was kind of anti-environmental, not realizing that, anyway. But because we created such a political machine, and it was based out of me and Caitlin Burney, who some of you know, doing conference calls, this was pre-Zoom, thank God, sitting in our car on Maple Street outside the PJs, right? And they were weird conference calls because when you get 100 plus people, somebody inevitably doesn't mute their phone when they're doing something. But we got it done, and that was when I realized that in all these disasters, if you feel isolated, the trick is to reach out to Houston, right? Reach out to Nashville, Memphis, Atlanta, Tampa, and create a coalition, and suddenly you can become very, very strong. I think the eighth one, and again, I did this early in the morning, I was getting redundant. I said, practice radical resilience, and this I think is, again, this idea of thinking about how we make change that drives systems change. I've beaten this horse. But the point is that if you can do a change that saves a life today, but makes 100 lives better tomorrow, that's the change that you should be making, right? And that's, and to some degree, it's what we were just talking about, Billy, about berms versus, the marsh restorations. What's your time period? And you need to be able to deal with both, right? Ninth one. This is one that these days, when hating on the business community is like the national sport, I want to reemphasize, none of these changes that happened, whether it was the fixes from 9/11, where groups like the Partnership for New York City got involved, post-Katrina, where business groups were leading the charge for good government, for education reform, for flood reform, or right now in COVID, the business community is the essential partner. And all of the good things that happen, my opinion, very biased, is through public-private partnership. Government cannot do it alone. It is not set up to do it alone. The business community is not legally set up to do it alone. But if you look, for example, at what's happened with the vaccines, okay? Because it's good news, nobody's talking about it. But what has occurred with the vaccines, Operation Warp Speed, and these are not political statements, these are like, I'm trying to be objective, or what's happening with the rollout, it's because there was massive public-private partnership. What happened in Operation Warp Speed? The government said to the drug companies, we're going to prepay for these drugs so you can go right to production without even knowing yet whether they're going to work. And so that took a 5-year, right, time period. It condensed it down to 5 months. Do you think we're ever going to tolerate 5 years to develop a vaccine again? Never. Millions and millions of lives are going to be saved because of that public-private partnership. It was actually, it was a genius gamble, right? And so the business community, I think, has an essential role to play in working through a disaster and in making things better. And I'm trying, I hope as a country we can get past this idea that of Duck McScrooge and business is bad for all kinds of reasons. But in a disaster context, government that tries to do it alone is going to fail. Let me give you a very near and dear example to me. Who here has taken advantage of the PPP? Yeah, you know me, right? Okay. All right, generational reference. All right. At the beginning of that, we did a draft of the PPP and sent it to Marco Rubio, who was running Senate Finance Committee. And what we said is that when you get money out, and we know this from doing the post-Katrina program and doing the post-9/11 program, do not go through the SBA. And whatever you do, praise be, don't go through HUD. Because if you do, then the pandemic will be over and people will not yet be getting their money, right? Because the SBA and HUD and CDBG programs are not set up to get out money quickly. They're not, there's no incentives to do so. And so I said, go through the banks, because the banks have the relationships, they're set up to get out, just indemnify them so they can do it without getting, caught on the back end, right? And that's what the PPP was. And as a result, people criticize the PPP because that sells newspapers. It by a magnitude has been the biggest, fastest, most impactful business program in the history of this country, and it has saved the economy, right? And there have been other ones like the ERTC that have also been good, but compare the EIDL, the Emergency Disaster Loan Program, to PPP, and you couldn't see EIDL on the EIDL loan. What I love about government is that they always give things acronyms with no sense of irony. So like the Emergency Disaster Loan from the SBA that doesn't work is called the EIDL loan. It's like, idle things don't move, right? Right? It was like when I started at LED back when I came back to Louisiana, it was called DOD, right? Or Division of Administration was DOA. I was like, guys, these are not good. These are not good acronyms, right? Or the best one, and it got changed, but back in the Nagin days, the URL for New Orleans was City of No. Am I making that up, Kyle? No, you're not. I'm not making that up. All right, last thing, number 10. You've been very patient today. Please come back for my 10 o'clock show. On one hand, as a nation and certainly as a state, and this goes back to the days of Huey Long, we've got a big man problem. It's kind of a bit what we were talking about out there, Dickie, is that we're always looking for that one person or that one leader to solve our problems for us. And that's a very dangerous trap to fall into for obvious reasons. But on the other hand, when I look back on all of these disasters and the result that's come through them, leadership matters. Leadership matters at an essential level. Let's go back to 9/11. Rudy Giuliani. Everybody hated Rudy Giuliani until 9/11, right? Because he was mean, he was nasty. Now, he was also cleaning up New York City, so he was actually everybody's secret crush. But he was truly a mean and nasty person, and he wasn't popular. Then 9/11 happened. He was the right person for that moment, right? And he gave people a sense of leadership and strength. And then Bloomberg came in after that. And forget like Bloomberg's debate performances. Back when Bloomberg was a mayor, he was an extraordinary technocrat, incredibly competent, with incredible people around him. And that combination of Giuliani's leadership and strength in the moment, and then Bloomberg's kind of technocratic, wonky approach afterwards, is what brought back New York City, better than it had been before then. And then you can kind of go back and look at Katrina and the leaders that came out of Katrina, some of whom are in this room today. Or like, look at a General Honore, right, who had been a retired general, right? And then he had his moments that don't get stuck on stupid. And now he's fixing the White House. Or again, Drew Brees and how he inspired us and gave us a model of what grace and teamwork and leadership, looks like. So these models, they really do matter. And now in COVID, what's interesting is that we have an opportunity kind of to do both because it's a slow-moving disaster. On one hand, the executive leadership matters at the federal, state, and local level, right? Our elected leaders matter a ton. I mean, the lieutenant governor has a bully pulpit that's bigger than all the rest of us in this room. I mean, he works it too, but it's the nature of being an elected official. It's your privilege and it's your responsibility. But what I've also seen is that every single individual, whether they're running a business or they're an employee in a business or they're a homemaker or they're a child, also has the opportunity to lead by picking the organization or the issue that they want to make a difference on. And so I think it's that understanding that executive top level leadership truly does matter and there are ways to do it well, but also that each of us can pick our issue or our organization or our family and provide leadership by modeling the right behavior, by attacking the problems proactively, by rubbing our stomach and patting our head and make a difference there. And all this stuff kind of, accretes and leads to success over time. And so, this idea of all of us being a leader sounds trite, but I just think it is something that's important for us to remember. And so I guess I'll conclude, and then I'm happy to take questions, is the thing that always is in my mind through these disasters is this balance of providing the assistance to mitigate circumstances today, to save lives and to help people, at the exact same time that we are looking to the horizon and trying to create a better tomorrow. And that's not schizophrenic, right? That's not confused. That's the dual way, the dynamic way as leaders we have to approach every day. And if we do that, then we do experience not just recovery or resilience, but this radical resilience, and we're stronger for it. So I'm thrilled to be able to emote to you. This has been good therapy for me, except for the thing about foreign cinema and the Jesus statue, which I'm still slightly unnerved by. I'll show you the picture of it too. I have it on my phone. But thank you all for having me today, and thank you for what you do in the hospitality business. You create experiences that make life worth living, and I'm not just saying that, I know it because I've lived through it, and so you do something that's very special for people, so thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Michael at all?
Yeah, Kyle?
Heard you speak several years ago, Michael, about high-speed rail from New Orleans to Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
Obviously in Lake Charles, and if we can get it to Baton Rouge, then we can go Lafayette to Lake Charles and really connect all of South Louisiana with high-speed rail. With all of the infrastructure dollars that are coming down, how does that change the possibility of making that happen?
Yeah, so this thing, all right, so the rail thing is a really interesting story. So flash back a few years, and Obama offered Governor Jindal $300 million for rail, and it was rejected because I think rail was associated with, like, I don't know, European or creeping socialism, or Grover Norquist told him not to take the money. By the way, no match. $300 million, zero match. Let that sink in. Here's $300 million. No, I'm good, right? Craziness. Anyway, so then we kind of gone into a bit of this kind of stalemate, and they're about rail. But flash forward to today, and the president is Amtrak Joe, right? And Joe Biden loves rail because he famously would go home to Delaware every day from D.C. because he had experienced a personal tragedy, had lost his wife and infant in a car accident, so he had to be with his family. And so he has a personal affinity for rail. So you combine that with two other things, with kind of the general move towards away from cars and kind of the political pressures on green stuff, and then trillions with a T, which is going to be for surface transportation, including rail. I think we'll get it done. It's politically very popular. When we poll it, you get 70+% people saying that they want it. The parish presidents from New Orleans to Baton Rouge and beyond want it. They've created plans for stations. And just to be clear about it, it's not going to be high-speed rail. It'll be commuter rail on the Casey Southern line. And what it means is that you could go from Baton Rouge to New Orleans in, an hour and a half, but it would be regular. You could work, you could drink, all those things that you're doing in your car anyway, but now you could do it safely. And eventually it'll extend Lafayette, Lake Charles, Houston. Also, we'll be going north up to Shreveport and then to Dallas. And the line between New Orleans and Mobile is actually restarting. That was actually renamed, and that's actually a big deal. Now, the other one, just for people in this room who care about it, is what I'm calling light rail, or BRT, bus rapid transit, between downtown with stops in Jefferson out to the airport. That's a separate deal. It needs to be a separate mode because it has to be much faster. But that also, I think, stands a good chance because the political winds have shifted. And like a lot of stuff in politics, you've got to kind of keep stuff on low boil, and then you get the right moment and it boils, right? And so I'd give it I'd bet you a root beer that in 5 years we have something. A Barks. What is there anything I left out of that top 10 list? I'll probably write this down because there are a few good ideas in it. What I leave out?
Not necessarily left out. Whenever I hear someone say, we just did a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, or whatever, I always want to ask the question, how many people under 40 years old, the 30-year-olds, were involved in that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many people in this room are under 40 years old?
Right, at heart or in reality?
Mentality.
Mental age or physical age?
And, what are your thoughts on this next generation and how can we get them engaged? Because I think it's really up to them. I mean, we are here to share wisdom, but they should be the leaders.
Yeah, so great point. So we have this thing, GNO Future. It's on our website at gnoinc.org. I'm very proud of the plan because we did it over a year talking to national experts like Tom Murphy helped bring back Pittsburgh, as well as local experts, including our Next Gen Council, which is people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. So we've had that input. But, I think that there's two challenges. One is, if you look at the story of any place that's really turned itself around, like Singapore is probably the most dramatic example in the past couple of generations. Singapore turned around in part because they had a benevolent dictator. Lee Kuan Yew ran Singapore for 45 years, right? And so he was able to take it from being a kind of a culturally riven backwater that was kicked out of Malaysia into the third highest GDP per capita in the world. But it was one person driving it over 45 years. China is a threat because they're operating on a 1,000-year horizon, right? Whereas in the States, we operate on what? 4 years, 6 years. If you're a congressperson, 2 years. And so there's a time horizon, a consistency kind of challenge. But getting to what you're getting at, Dickie, trying to create a sense of ownership and a sense of, I think it's more than ownership. I think it's a sense of efficacy, a sense that actually their efforts would matter, is missing. I think part of the problem, when people say that Generation Z doesn't care, I think it's because they feel like they're not in control. Like they can't impact things, so might as well play Fortnite, right? And so I kind of half kidding always say this, that every young person, particularly every young boy, should have 3 experiences before they go out into the real world. One, they should work in a restaurant so they understand people and money, because once you understand those 2 things, there's not much else to learn in life. The second thing is that they should do military service or some type of paramilitary service, or not paramilitary, but like Peace Corps, to teach them discipline. Anybody that's ever served will tell you that that experience was incredibly formative. And the third thing is that they should go on a Mormon mission and have to sell something that nobody wants in a language they don't speak, because that teaches salesmanship and having a thick skin. And I think that if our young people had these experiences, they would come into the world with a much more sense of control and efficacy, that they could actually impact things. So I guess the question is, Dickie, is how do we teach people that they don't only have an opportunity but a responsibility to engage the world and drive change? And it's hard because the prevailing narrative right now is that everything is done to you, that the world occurs in the passive voice, and that you can't get things done because of history or policies or biases. And that's a very dangerous road to go down, because even though those challenges might be very, very real, the message to people is that they don't have personal agency. And so I think there's some of that. And so it's about, I think, giving kids these experiences, teaching them that when you fall down and skin your knee, you can get back up again and a scar forms. That means the next time you fall, it's not going to get cut. And so I have 14 and 18-year-old kids, so I think about this all the time, and it's a challenge. But definitely those three things: restaurant, military, and going down to Chile and trying to preach the Church of Latter-day Saints. Have you ever worked with Mormons? I did in Boston for a summer. They're the most extraordinary business people. I mean, Mitt Romney is kind of like the archetype of that. Didn't think you'd be talking about Mormons this morning, huh?
Or a projector coming out of Jesus.
Or a projector coming out of Jesus.
So wait, what happened to the film?
So we showed the film, just like straight out, and that worked fine. And I think to this day, Jesus is in storage somewhere in Oakland. We're trying to figure out what we could be. I don't know. Give it to, I don't know. Well, at least circle, right? All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay, all right, I want everybody to stand up, please. Okay, we need you to start rubbing your belly. Okay, all right, rub your belly. All right, now start patting your head. See, we're all leaders. Look at this. Oh, Michael, thank you so much. It could not have been better this morning. What a way to open up our first CEO forum. Please help me thank Michael one more time. It was excellent. I am so looking forward, Laura, to seeing that recording and be able to actually write down all those 10 topics. And I want to thank all of you because I think that he talked a lot about coalition building and regionalism and things working together and private-public partnerships, and that's how we get things done. And I think we've talked long and hard amongst all of us about how we form those partnerships and how we're so much better together going down that road. So I am going to take to heart a lot of what I heard today and try to put those 10 things into practice for sure. Up next, we're going to take a 30-minute break. We told you we're going to give you time in order to visit with each other, and that's what we want to do. We're going to enjoy some coffee in the foyer, and at 10:30, you're going to have a choice of 2 breakout sessions, and they're just right across the hall. In Post Oak 1, we're going to have better coalition with your board, collaboration, I'm sorry. I need to put my glasses on. Better collaboration with your board of directors, and that panel will be Kyle and Alana and Rebecca Blankenbaker, and they're going to walk us through the best practices for building and maintaining a productive working relationship with board members. In Post Oak 2, we're going to have How to Lead Your Team in the New Normal panel, where Dickie, Ralph, and Ben are going to chat about maintaining company culture, communicating effectively, and caring for your employees in the current shifting work environment. Please pick one of those and enjoy. And for those of you online, check your know before you go email that Madeline and Laura sent to you, I think, on Sunday afternoon. It will be, your lunch link will be there, and we'll see you guys online back at 12:15 for a presentation on workplace diversity by Dima. So we're glad she's with us. Plus a word from your Lieutenant Governor. So we will have lunch back in this room after those breakout sessions. But enjoy your 30-minute break.